محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين، سيما بقية الله روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. گرچه پیمان را شکستم بر سر پیمان با همه بدعهدیم، آن عاشق دیوانه گر به ظاهر دورم از درگاه تو ای نازنین، باز هم مشتاق روی دلکش جانانه از در میخانه ات ای شاهد خوبان مران، با همه عصیان همان دردی کش میخانه پرده بردار از رخ زیبا که مشتاق تو آن رخ زیبا ندیده واله و دیوانه پادشاه جودی و ما بنده درگاه تو، منتظر بر درگهت زان بخشش شاهانه انتظار از حد گذشته شه تحمل تا بکی آفتابا بهر دیدار رخت پروانه یا ابن الحسن یا ابن الحسن یا ابن الحسن. For the quick reappearance of Imam al-Fajr and his well-being, صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Just before I start, I want to ask for permission to drink water.
You're allowed to try.
Okay, no, we can't have exceptions, so if you allow water to everyone, I drink. If not, I'll leave it.
Only for the speaker, Sheik.
Huh?
Only for the speaker.
I think water should be fine. No?
Sometimes
by adults only.
By adults only. Okay, so water by adults only. And if children are to drink, they have to be watched by adults. So if that's the case, inshallah, I can drink. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed in the Holy Quran in Surah At-Tawbah, ayah 128, لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ عَزِيزٌ عَلَيْهِ مَا عَنِتُّمْ حَرِيصٌ عَلَيْكُمْ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَءُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ. This ayah, normally you will find a lot of people put it on, frame it and put it in their houses as a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. that has come to you, there has come to you an apostle from amongst yourselves. And meaning, to the people of Arabia, it was an apostle, a prophet from them. To us, it's a prophet again from us. From our kind has come to us a messenger. Min anfusikum. Now, this anfusikum, the same anfusikum that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about in the ayah of creating male and female, that He has created your wives or your partners, not wives necessarily. Zawj is a partner from yourselves, min anfusikum. Again here, it's a very nice way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is introducing the messenger in this ayah. لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ. He's from amongst you. Then, عَزِيزٌ عَلَيْهِ مَا عَنِتُّمْ. Grievous to him is what distresses you. Anything that distresses the believers, anything that is hard for the believer, it is also difficult for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Azizun alayhi ma anittum. What else? Bil-mu'minina ra'ufun rahim. He's merciful and he's kind to the believers. One of the very beautiful ayat that gives us so much reassurance. Because as we know, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has the maqam and the status of the great intercession. As mufassirin and scholars and riwayat have been mentioned about the tafsir of the maqam mahmuda, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you عسى أن يبعث ومن الليل فتهجد به نافلة لك عسى أن يبعثك ربك مقاما محمودا. In this maqam mahmuda, Mufassirin, they say, according to obviously riwayat from the Prophet from Ahlul Bayt, that this status of Maqam al-Mahmud is the status of intercession, the great intercession, ash-shafa'atul kubra, that is for everyone, not just the believers, not just the followers of the Prophet, not just the Muslims, not every human being will get that level of intercession from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Therefore, this maqam, and in a riwayah we read it's actually on the Day of Judgment. Everyone is standing in the scorching heat of the Day of Judgment. The sun, according to riwayat, will be ordered to come closer. Now how, what sort of a distance we're talking about, inches or centimeters or meters, God knows. This is one on the one side. On the other side, the earth will be ordered to close all of its holes, so it's not absorbent anymore. You know, when rain comes down, what happens? It goes down in earth, through the sand, through the rocks, through all the different means it goes down. It forms the underground waters. Imagine the surface of the earth was sealed. What would happen? Always floody. That's what will happen according to this riwayah and some riwayat about the Day of Judgment. The earth will seal and the sun will come closer. And in such conditions, everyone is sweating so much that people are almost about to drown in their own sweat. Can you imagine the situation? Now, whether it's a description given to a physical difficulty on the Day of Judgment, or different difficulty that sounds like this, Allahu A'lam, we don't know. However, it's a very difficult day. If you imagine such a situation, it's not an easy situation. In such difficult conditions, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he comes and intercedes for all humankind, so that that day becomes shorter, because it's a very long day. Everyone stands. It's not a day, 24-hour day. When we talk about the days in the realm of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's a period of time. Allahu A'lam. It's a marhala, as we say. It's a period of time. God knows how long it is. So the Day of Judgment is not a 24-hour day. And it is so difficult in people, according to the riwayat, with the intercession of Rasulullah, the great intercession that everyone recognizes, and therefore it's mahmood. Everyone praises. Every human being will praise that status of Rasulullah, and will recognize first that status, the intercession that they will receive. They will recognize it and praise the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Therefore, عسى أن يبعثك ربك مقاما محمودا. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Therefore, this merciful Prophet, this merciful Apostle, when it comes to the believers, he is extra kind. He is extra merciful. عزيز عليه ما عنتم. If someone is struggling in the companions, and we have riwayat that confirm that when a companion, one of the believers, one of the real believers and the good companions, not anyone, the real believers of Rasulullah, when he was sick, the Prophet would get sick. You might wonder, how does that work? Today, they have confirmed that most of our sicknesses are caused by what? They're caused by our mental status, by our stress. Most of the problems, physical problems, caused by our psychological and emotional issues. When we are stressed out, it's very easy for us to get sick. Do we have examples of that? I was speaking to one of the brothers the other day. I was speaking of a brother that is very emotional. When he knows of another brother that's going through difficulties, he actually gets physically sick. He starts getting back pains and problems and physical illnesses. You probably have met someone like that. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, from the amount of love and kindness and mercy he had for the believers, when he would know of a believer that was not well, the Prophet would be physically unwell. Then we'll look into the Quran and what the Quran orders us in terms of how do we treat this Prophet. How do we take him as an example? Again, in the Quran we read in Surah Al-Ahzab, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو اللَّهَ وَالْيَوْمَ الْآخِرَ وَذَكَرَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا. In this apostle, in this messenger, for you is certainly a good example for those who want to go closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yarjullah, and they have hope in the Day of Judgment, and they remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala greatly. وَذَكَرَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا. Those believers, they take the Prophet as a good example for themselves, and they act like him. What does it mean? In this context, it means that we have to have kindness in our hearts. It means that we have to have mercy in our hearts. It means we have to care about our mu'min and Muslim brothers. It means when someone is hurting, we are hurting. The famous poet, he says, Bani Adam a'zai yekdigarand. Same in Arabic, we have the same hadith, in fact. This poem is taken from a hadith that all children of Adam, in fact, are like the limbs of one body. If one part of the body is aching, the rest of the parts of that body cannot be in peace and in feeling well while one is aching. Imagine you have a toothache. A very small part of your body, tooth. If someone has a toothache, can they sleep the night? A simple toothache will take sleeping away from you. From the entire body. The whole body is in pain because of this simple tooth. In fact, we read about chronic pains. In science, they speak about chronic pains. I guess doctors can explain better about how they travel. The pain eventually starts traveling from one part of the body to another. That part is the affected part, then another part is hurting, is aching. Why? Because the body starts acting like that and reacting like that. This is how the same thing works for human society. It should be like that. We can't be indifferent to sufferings of other people. We have to use the example of the Prophet, the example of Ahlul Bayt salawatullah wa salamu alayhim, where they care about one another. They have this mercy in their hearts. They feel the pain of others. They don't just say it. You know, sometimes someone shares their problems with you and you say, yeah, I feel you, you know, I hear you, I feel with you. But in reality, you're probably thinking about something else. Why is this guy complaining to me? Anyhow, a real believer, a real mu'min should be using the example of the Prophet and should be kind to the believers. Have mercy for the believers. Now, we've been speaking about love and how love leads us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through love for our neighbors, love for our parents, love for our brothers, sisters, children, love for Ahlul Bayt, love for Rasulullah, and then all that love leads us, if it's in the right direction, if it's for the right reason, leads us to the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And through that we also discussed how it's important to love our brothers. Now, some fact I will give you here, which is a fact. If someone is in love with anyone, any particular person, or with God, or whatever it might be that he's in love with, naturally that love will lead this person to love anything associated with his beloved. So if I'm in love with a specific, even let's say someone falls in love with a city, then that someone, that person, is in love with anything associated with his city, with that city. If that city has certain trees, then he's in love with those trees. If that city has warm weather, then he's in love with the warm weather. And anywhere he goes, if he finds something that's similar to what he has in the city he's in love with, or the country he's in love with, he starts remembering. Some of you might have certain, not so much love, but some kind of, attraction, this attraction towards your heart for certain things, cities or whatever it may be, and might relate to this factor. If you're in love with anything, naturally you're in love with anything associated with your beloved. This is a fact. Anyone who has any sense of understanding of the concept of love or has experienced any kind of love, and this is one of the gifts from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The real love that every human being should be seeking is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every other love that's not in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not a real love. It's a fake love. In fact, we are advised to only love something that lasts. And the only thing that lasts is كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذي الجلال والإكرام. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, He is the eternal love that we should love. This is the reality, but He, out of His mercy, He gives us love for different things to taste this love. To be able to somehow relate to the concept of love. In fact, Arafat, mystics, they say to their students, if you go and want to study Arfan, they say if you haven't fallen in love, fall in love and come back. Because then you can understand what we're talking about. Otherwise, most of what we are talking about is just so strange to you. It's just a concept that you cannot comprehend. It's like when you go and study jurisprudence, they say when you get to certain topics in Hausa, they say you need to be married to understand these topics. Unless you're married, you will not understand these topics. Same things apply here. If you have not fallen in some kind of love, real love, the love that makes you, stay up at night and think of your beloved and so on and so forth. If you fall in this kind of love, then it's easier for you to understand the concept of the real love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because then if your beloved drives a Honda, then Honda is a good car, isn't it? If whatever is associated with your beloved becomes a beloved concept as well. This is a reality. Then here comes the question. If that is the case, then why is there so much emphasis in Quran from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then through the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, so much emphasis for us to love the lovers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning those associated with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why do we keep on getting reminded? If it's a natural thing, if it's going to happen automatically, if by loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, automatically we're going to love everyone that's associated with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and automatically we will also hate everything that takes us away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why the reminders? This is my question. Think about it. It's very simple. Because none of us have reached that real love. If we reach that real love, we don't need reminders. But none of us have reached that real love, unfortunately. All of us are striving and trying and might have some level of love, but we have not reached that real love. That real love automatically draws us close and makes us so affectionate to anything associated with our beloved. When we know that, for example, a particular person is a godly person, and I'm so much in love with God, anyone that has anything associated with God, I'm just automatically drawn to them, attracted to them. This is the reality. The more we reach that higher we reach in the love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the easier it is for us to love anyone associated with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The lower our level, the harder it is. This is what it is. And therefore, like in dhikr, in the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are meant to do dhikr again and again. Say, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allah. Why so many times? Allahu Akbar once. Why 10 times, 34 times after each salat? Why? Subhanallah or Alhamdulillah. Why? So it's because we're saying it with our lips, perhaps thinking about it with our mind, but it needs to penetrate deep in our hearts, and that's why we keep on saying it and saying it. Perhaps one day it'll penetrate in our hearts. That's what it is. All these reminders about loving the lovers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, loving those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders us to love because they are closer to Him, loving the lovers of Allah, loving the lovers of Allah. And I'll read the hadith for you. All these reminders are so that it makes us in the state of that lover. Like the traditions of what we do in Muharram. In fact, I was asked today by one of the ladies, is it okay to buy stuff, go shopping in Muharram or in the first 10 days of Muharram? That was the question. And I really appreciate that question because it shows a level of concern. They want to know what is okay and what is not okay to do in this time of the month. And the response that our ulama, our scholars, have given us based on the lifestyle of Ahlul Bayt and the responses and the teachings of Ahlul Bayt salawatullah wa salamu alayhim is very simple. Anything that you would genuinely refrain from, pay attention. If this is something that concerns you, if you share that concern, and if it's a question in your mind, pay attention to the answer. What do we refrain from during the days of Muharram, specifically on the 10th of Muharram? Anything you would refrain from when you are genuinely and deeply affected by a calamity, a loss in your family, a loss of a beloved, someone who you really love. If you are in deep love with a person, whoever it may be, your mother, your wife, your children, your grandparents, a neighbor, a friend, whoever it may be, that you really are in love with, and with that loss, if they pass away, something happened, an accident, whatever, you are deeply grieved, and in that, affectionate level, in that sadness, that you are genuinely in that level, in that kind of state, you refrain from certain things. Anything you would refrain from in these conditions, you should refrain from in the days of Muharram, specifically on the 10th, on the day of Ashura. So it's simple, you can judge it yourself. Why? Because perhaps we have not reached the level of love for Imam Hussein that we have for others. Perhaps we might say it, we might claim it, but we have not reached it unless that automatically becomes the case. It's automatically and as soon, and some believers have reached that level, as soon as it comes the beginning of the month of Muharram, their hearts are aching, in real pain, more than the loss of their father, more than the loss of a mother, more than the loss of a child. And that's because of the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what it should be. فَإِذَا قَضَيْتُمْ مَنَاسِكَكُمْ in the Quran, it says to us, when you finish your Hajj, now those who did Hajj, who did they do Hajj for? Perhaps for Allah, supposedly for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Quran says to them, فَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ كَذِكْرِكُمْ, and I've recited this ayah before in this gathering. فَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ كَذِكْرِكُمْ آبَاءَكُمْ أَوْ أَشَدَّ ذِكْرًا. Then remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the way you remember your fathers, or even more. That's what it's meant to be. We're meant to love Imam Hussein at least as much as we love our fathers, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, obviously. Or even more. So when a believer reaches the state of the real love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for the friends of Allah, for awliyaullah, then automatically when it comes to their friends, he's their friend. He's drawn to them because they're associated with his beloved. Automatically comes the day of Muharram, the days of Muharram, he's saddened. He can't do anything fun. He goes for his important things that he has to do for his day-to-day life. Nonetheless, he refrains from anything that is supposed to be fun, anything that he can put aside and just concentrate on mourning his beloved. This, in short, although it took more than what I wanted it, but I wanted to instill this answer in your minds. Why do we keep on reminding ourselves of loving the friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, loving Ahlul Bayt, loving the lovers of Ahlul Bayt? Why? Because we need to, through that, reach the real level, the real love, where automatically that happens. Like when we do dhikr, automatically when we start saying, he's a believer, he's a lover of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's a genuine lover of the Prophet of Islam, then I love them. Then I'm drawn to them for that, for what he has in his heart. One of the things that has been said about this love, and it has to be, as I said, for everyone associated with the beloved, irrespective of their level of practice. We have to have that love for them. Obviously, the more practice they do, the more practicing believers they are, because as we have in the hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. He says, "Ahbib al-ikhwan ala qadr al-taqwa." Love your brothers, your mu'min brothers, based on the level of piety. So those who are not so practicing, we love them because they're associated with our beloved, because they love the Prophet, his progeny, they love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We love them the basic level. And the more pious they are, the more love we should grow for them in our hearts. Because we're loving their actions as well, remember? When you love their actions, you start acting like them, and eventually you become like them. So if they are real musalleen, shakirin, dhakirin, you become like them. The more pious they are, the more you should love them. Ahbib al-ikhwan ala qadar al-taqwa, according to the level of piety. So the question is, what if someone is not pious and commits some sins? Should I still love them? If a follower of Ahlul Bayt, a lover of Imam Hussein, that perhaps sometimes misses her morning prayers or his morning prayer, if a lover of Ahlul Bayt does not wear her hijab, should I still love them or should I boycott them? That's my question. According to the hadith, we still love them. Not for that action. Don't mistake the love for them, for what they have in terms of love for Ahlul Bayt, is not mixed with loving their actions. Of course I don't love that action. Of course we don't encourage that action. But we love them the basic level because of their love for the Prophet, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In one story, a man comes to Imam Sadiq alayhi afdal salawat wa tahiyyat. He says, Ya ibn Rasulillah, I have a brother. My brother loves you. He loves the Prophet. He loves the children of the Prophet. He loves you. But he does something that I disapprove of, and I don't know how to deal with him. He said, what does he do? He said, my brother consumes alcohol. And we know that one of the greatest sins is consuming alcohol. It leads us into greater sins even. In one example, Ahlul Bayt gave us a great example in a story where someone was comparing different sins, lying and drinking and consuming alcohol and fornication or adultery. Or the other one was adultery, one was murdering, and one was consuming alcohol. Those three sins, great sins. And someone wanted to compare them. That person looked at the punishment factor. He said, if someone kills, then they have to be, if someone kills intentionally, then their punishment is killing. Capital punishment. Islam is not against capital punishment when it's due. If someone intentionally takes the life of a person, his life should be taken. That's how it works. So, that obviously to this person who was asked this question, that was the biggest sin. And then the next one for him was adultery, because it's against someone else, so it involves someone else. And the final one was drinking. To him it was the least significant sin. When Ahlul Bayt taught us through this hadith that it could be the opposite. You can't compare. In Islam there's no such comparison. Just because the punishment for that is greater than this sin doesn't mean that this is a greater sin or that's a greater sin. Because the Imam says, what about someone who drinks and as a result of consuming alcohol he goes and commits fornication and adultery, and in fear of anyone finding out he also commits a murder? What happens then? You know, some people, unfortunately, in some countries, in fact in Australia, it happened once on a large scale. And a huge community consumed so much alcohol to go in the streets and commit crimes. They wanted to commit crimes against others. So they consumed alcohol. Therefore, when they go in the court, they say, we were drunk, we didn't know what we were doing. That's exactly what the children of Rasulullah, Ahlul Bayt, were telling us. That you can't compare sins. It's a great sin. Brothers and sisters, be very careful. Sitting around a table that alcohol is being served is a sin. Not just sipping yourself. That's one of the greatest sins. Nonetheless, someone commits this sin. And he's a brother of this man who came to the Imam. He said, how do I deal with him? The Imam said to him that you love him for the love he has for us. And someone who loves us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will clean him before the day of judgment. One way or another. Then the man asked, how? He said, either he will learn and he will have a good ending, because this is what matters, the good ending. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, pay attention to this because this is scary. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, لَيَبْتَلِيَهُ اللَّهِ, God will put him in so much misfortune and so many calamities in this world, so that these parts of his life are clean before the day of judgment. This is what I call the elixir of love. You know what elixir is? In the past, they used to, we're talking about ancient history, they used to believe that there is a substance, that this substance has such a great effect. If you put it on cheap metals, they turn into gold. And if you consume that, you actually live eternally. It cures all illnesses. They believed that there was such a thing. So they were in search of it. And in search of that, actually, the science of chemistry developed partially in search of that so-called elixir, Iksir al-Hayat. They were looking for something they would consume and they live eternally. There is something that you can consume and it changes you. there is something that when it touches anything, it changes it. Anything and absolutely anything. And that is love. You look at any concept, you look at disciplining children, you use love, it works. Without love, it doesn't work. Talking to any person, you use love, it works. You want to advise a brother, with love, it works. Without love, it doesn't work. A messenger from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the most love amongst all other messengers, and his mercy to mankind, his message becomes eternal, and it becomes the last and the final apostle. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, rahmatan lil alameen. Mercy to all mankind. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. One other thing that we have to look in the concept of love, and especially love for the lovers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and anyone associated with them. It works like an insurance policy. You know insurance policies? People take them for safety of mind. If you have a house, you have a car, whatever it is, you take an insurance policy. You take it for safety of mind. You want to have security and feel secure that your house, your car, whatever it is, it's protected. Your workplace, your shop, your business, your factory, anything that you own, you want to feel that it is protected in case anything happens. However, to keep that insurance policy going, there are certain conditions, are there not? If you break some of these conditions, your insurance policy will be voided or cancelled. Sometimes, because of certain things that you might do, you put a claim, then they reject your claim. Other times they take you to court and you have to prove your case in order to what? To win your case and get your claim approved. The same concept applies when you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you love the lovers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, you get its assurance that the reward, and I gave you the hadith last night, the reward of those who love the Prophet, love the progeny of the Prophet, and love those who love the progeny of the Prophet is Jannah, is paradise. On the other hand, the opposite of that, the punishment is hellfire. So if you love Ahlul Bayt, you love the Prophet, you love the lovers of Ahlul Bayt, you have that assurance. It's an insurance policy, also with its conditions. So if you, God forbid, commit certain sins, you will have to go through the court and prove your case. You might have to pay, in some cases they get you to pay an initial premium, or they call it access fee or something, and then you can get your claim approved. So you have to pay something. If you, God forbid, commit sins, if someone is God forbid, a sinner, yet he is in deep love, a real love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ahlul Bayt, and the lovers of Ahlul Bayt, Shia to Ahlul Bayt, then this is what happens. Through the elixir of love, he will be purified, taxed, eventually to enter paradise, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Yaqub ibn Maytham al-Tammar. Maytham al-Tammar is a famous companion of Amir al-Mu'mineen sallallahu wa sallam alayhi. His son, his name is Yaqub. He says, دخلت على أبي جعفر. He entered the court or the house of Imam Baqir alayhi afdal salawat wa tahiyyat. Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, he says, I entered and I said, جعلت فداك يا ابن رسول الله. May I be sacrificed for you. إني وجدت في كتب أبي I found in the books of my fathers أن عليا عليه السلام قال لأبي. My father had told my أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام told my father, أحبب حبيب آل محمد وإن كان فاسقا وابغض مبغض آل محمد وإن كان صواما قواما. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. He said, I found a strange hadith in the books of my father. My father has written this hadith from Amir al-Mu'mineen that says, love the lovers of the progeny of the Prophet, even if they are transgressors, even if they commit sins, and hate those who hate the progeny of Rasulullah, even if they continuously pray and fast. So I'm wondering, Ibn Rasulullah, is this hadith correct or is it not? فإني سمعت رسول الله صلى الله. The continuation of the hadith goes, فإني سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم يقول. Amir al-Mu'mineen is saying, I had heard the Prophet saying, الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات أولئك هم خير البرية. And through that, the Prophet was telling his companions that the best people are those who believe and do good. And he says the best action is love. Therefore, this is the hadith. Is it correct, Ya ibn Rasulullah? Then Imam says to him, فقال أبو جعفر عليه السلام هكذا هو عيانا في كتاب علي عليه السلام. We also have the books of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He has passed it on to us. Whatever we have is from Rasulullah. And this is exactly what we have. And Imam is confirming this hadith. Imam then, in another place, he explains the reason. He says, those who have hatred for the progeny of Rasulullah, they have what shaitan has. They have arrogance. The messenger of God, the one who spent his life and had so much mercy for mankind, wanting to spread the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The message of God, he was spreading with his blood, with anything he could, willing to give up anything, including knowing about what will happen to his children, to his family, to his own daughter. He knew all that, yet he left the companions that were the hypocrites that were around him. He let them live loose because he knew that this is the best for his community, for the nation, for the spreading of the message of Islam, so he let it be. And allowed all that to happen, sacrificed anything and everything for the sake of God. And someone arrogant does not appreciate what the Prophet does and does not go with what the Prophet has ordered, to love his progeny because they are the gates to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This person is arrogant. He will not have anything but hypocrisy in his heart, and his ending is nothing but hellfire. This is what Ahlul Bayt taught us. On the other hand, the one who has love and fills his heart with love for Ahlul Bayt, their lovers, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the messenger, he has a soft heart. Which hearts can be saved on the day of judgment? Is it the soft heart or the hard heart? Let's read the Quran. Which one? يوم لا ينفع مال ولا بنون إلا من أتى الله بقلب سليم. Which ones are the qalb salim? Which one are the good hearts? The ones filled with hatred? القاسية قلوبهم? It is not. Quran speaks about ثم قست قلوبهم من بعد ذلك فهي كالحجارة أو أشد قسوة. Some of them, because of so much transgression, arrogance, opposing the words of the messengers of God, eventually their hearts became so hard, even harder than rocks. Because rocks, Quran says rocks can even open up way for water to flow through them. That's what happens. Whereas these people, nothing flows through their heart, filled with hatred. On the other hand, the soft hearts, the hearts filled with love for the Prophet, for his progeny, and for anyone. And this is the love I've been speaking about for the community. This is the precondition for unity. Sometimes we wonder, how can we unite? We can never unite if we don't fill up our hearts with love. If we, they often speak about tolerance. The concept of tolerance in a multicultural society. We have to tolerate each other. I disagree with that concept completely. You know why? Because tolerance means that something is annoying you, yet you have to tolerate it. Why is it annoying you? Because he's different to us, it's annoying? Because he dresses up differently, we have to tolerate him? Because he prays a different way, we have to tolerate him? No. This is not what we're meant to do. Acceptance is what we have to have. أَلَمْ نَشْرَحْ لَكَ صَدْرَكَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking to his messenger. And we have to use him as an example. It's not just the messenger. If you want to be a good believer, if you want to go up and up in the stages of the faithful ones, you have to open up your heart. You have to welcome everyone in your heart. You have to have a loving heart. Anyone for the sake of God. You only reject the actions of those whose action takes them away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what we have to train ourselves to do. Open up our heart. Fill up our hearts with love. That is how we can gain the unity in our community. How we can actually proceed and become more advanced. Otherwise we'll just stay in our own problems. وَلَا يُغَيِّرَ اللَّهُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. God will not change the conditions of any nation until they change what's in them, in their own selves. All these problems we have to clear it to be able to move forward. In one hadith, and I'll finish inshallah with this one. One day Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says to his followers, I have been ordered to love 4, and I want you to love 4 people. There are many lessons in this story. Then they ask him, who are these 4, Ya Rasulullah? He says, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Sallallahu ala Muhammad. Then he stops there. They were waiting. Then he said it again. I have been ordered to love 4, and I want you, my companions, to love 4. They said, okay, who are these? Then the second time, according to some riwayat, after the second time, the third time. So eventually he said, Aliyun, wa Miqdad, wa Abadar, wa Salman. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala. Now why do you think the Prophet in the first time he just said Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, and in the second time he illustrated? You know why? It's very simple, and I think all of you, or most of you, would have realized. It's because the love of those other 3 is for the love of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Because Imam Ali alayhi salam In many ahadith, the Prophet said his love is the love of God, is my love, and my love is the love of God. That's what will enter you in heaven. Then in this hadith, he's confirming that love him and also love, you know what was common between these? Miqdad, Abu Dharr and Salman. They were Imam Ali alayhi salam's devotees. They were devoted to Imam Ali alayhi salam. You know, some people speak about the Shahada, what we say, Ashhadu anna Aliya Waliullah. Whether or not it was at the time of the Prophet, mustahab, wajib, all these things. We have a riwayah, and it's a confirmed riwayah, that one day they came, some companions, some of those who were always jealous with Imam Ali alayhi salam, came to the Prophet and said, Ya Rasulullah, Salman, when he says adhan, after he says, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, he also yuqirru li'aliyin bil-wilaya in his adhan. What did the Prophet say? Did he disapprove of that? We know, according to our Sharia, according to our jurisprudence, taqreer of the Prophet, whether he disagrees or agrees with something, is a way of actually making rules. It's used in jurisprudence. The Prophet in that instance, he says, Wilayatu Salman khayrun min wilayatikum. The wilaya, the level of friendship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what it is. Wilaya is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The wilaya, the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and wanting to be in the party of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the heart of Salman is better than every other one in you guys. And that is why he says that in his adhan. It is fine what he says. It is good what he says. Now he became better than you because of what he said. This is Salman. What about Abu Dharr? Abu Dharr, when they did what they did in Taqifa and whatever happened after the demise of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he disagreed with all the things. He kept on opposing and opposing until he was sent out of Medina. He was not tolerated in Medina anymore. He lived his life in Medina with Rasulullah. Now you're out. That was Abu Dharr. Miqdad eventually lost his life for the sake of Amir al-Mu'mineen. They were the devotees of Amir al-Mu'mineen. That was what was common in them. Therefore, because of the love they had for Amir al-Mu'mineen, the devotion they had for Amir al-Mu'mineen, the Prophet ordered his companions to love them. You want to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Love Amir al-Mu'mineen, love these devotees of Amir al-Mu'mineen also. What did they do? How did they treat them? What was the ending of those who opposed these devotees? They are cursed until the day of judgment. They are cursed through every believer all the way until the day of judgment. Those who oppose them. And those who love them, obviously they are on the path of Ahlul Bayt salawatullah wa salamu alayhim. Some of them gave their lives in the army of Imam Hussein, became amongst the best of the best. As we say, the cream of the crop. The best of the best. The love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala growing in one's heart. I've mentioned this before. It makes miracles. It makes a person have so much more power and passion in them that they are capable of doing so much more than any average person. Any human being, any person cannot comprehend how can they do what they do. One of those is none but the brother of Imam Hussein, the devotee of Imam Hussein. You know, we spoke about the devotees of Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah wa salamu alayhi. They were also the devotees of Rasulullah, because Amir al-Mu'mineen and the Prophet are nafsun wahida. They're one. They're not different. The devotees of Imam Hussein now, one of the best ones, one of the top ones, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas salawatullah wa salamu alayhi. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. I want you to turn off the lights and travel with your hearts tonight to Kufa, to the lands of Karbala. I want you to start thinking of the situation. By now, the water in the camp of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein is finished. According to the timeline, by now they had no more water in the tents. By now, all the companions are thirsty. All the companions are struggling. But the companion who's struggling more than the rest of the companions, the devotee who's struggling and in so much pain more than others, the one who was known as the bearer of the water, the one who brings water to the children, to the camp. السقاء أبا الفضل العباس السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل العباس ابن أمير المؤمنين المواسي لأخاه بنفسه. Whenever we think of Karbala, whenever we talk about Karbala, everyone remembers the tragedy of the thirst. In fact, Imam Hujjah Ajalallah Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, he speaks about the tragedy of the thirst of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and the children. Everyone remembers the tragedy of the thirst, al-atash, al-atash. And when we remember the tragedy of the thirst, everyone remembers the name of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. Laying on the plains of Karbala after a tiring and difficult day, after a battle that is about to cost him his life. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, in his last moments, the last moments of his life, now he's recalling. They say when someone is about to breathe his last, a flashback comes and they see the events of their life. What does Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas remember in this flashback? He remembers perhaps one day being in Kufa when Abu Abdullah al-Hussein was thirsty in Masjid al-Kufa. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen is giving his sermon. He's giving a khutbah, a lecture in Masjid al-Kufa. Abu al-Fadl realizes that Imam Hussein is thirsty. He rushes to bring water for his brother Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. As he comes back with wet clothes, water has spilled over him. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen from the minbar giving his lecture, he stops and he starts crying. Tears starts rolling down the face of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He comes back down from the minbar. He hugs his son and he's having tears in his eyes. Companions ask Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, this is a scene, the loving brothers, a scene that one should be pleased and happy about. You should be so happy about the love Abu al-Fadl has for Imam Hussein. He said, yes, but do not blame me. Today, he's serving his brother with water. And he comes with water spilling over his clothes. But one day, on the plains of Karbala, he will come try to serve water to his brother and the children of his brother. And he will have not the water on his shirt, but the blood of his head will be on his shirt. This is one flashback of Abu Fadl al-Abbas. Another flashback is the flashback of Amir al-Mu'mineen putting his hand in the hand of Imam Hussein alayhi salam when Amir al-Mu'mineen on the 21st of the month of Ramadan, after he was struck and he was in bed in his last moments, he was giving his will to his son Imam Hassan alayhi salam, trusting him with everything, all the children, all his brothers, everything. And then he did not give him one person. He did not speak about Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. Abu al-Fadl was in tears, wondering, why did my father forget me? He said to my brother Hassan, Imam Hassan alayhi salam, to take care of everyone, named him one by one, but he did not name me. Then Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen knew what in the mind of Abu al-Fadl. He said to him, come to me, my son, come to me, Abu al-Fadl. Then he called Imam Hussein. He put their hands together and he said, oh Hussein, this one is entrusted with you. This one is your trust, Imam Hussein. He will be always with you. He will serve you the way I would serve you. Amir al-Mu'mineen is telling Imam Hussein, he would serve you in Karbala the way I would have served you if I was there, O Hussein. He would be wanting to serve you every moment of his life. You take care of him. Abu al-Fadl remembers that. Then Abu al-Fadl remembers his mother, al-Baneen, when she was farewelling him in Medina. She is saying her final farewell. She hugs her son. She gives him so much affection. He is her first and her eldest son, the brave, the Qamar of Bani Hashim, the best son that she has. And then she says to him, my dear son, do not forget your father's will. Your father, Amir al-Mu'mineen, always wanted you to sacrifice yourself for Imam Hussein. Do not forget that. Make sure you don't leave Imam Hussein. Make sure you don't leave him for a moment. Make sure the tyrants, make sure the deceivers do not deceive you. They may give you the security, they may give you safety, they may ask you, do not be deceived by them. Stay with your brother Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Then his flashback on the riverbank. After he broke through the army, he got to the riverbank. And then he grabbed the water. He filled his skin with water, the bag with water. And he grabbed the water in his arm, in his hands, wanting to drink some water. Then he looked at the water, remembered the thirst of Imam Hussein. Ya nafs, ya nafs min ba'd al-Hussein huni wa ba'dahu la kunt an takuni. هذا حسين وارد هذا حسين شارب المنون وتشربين بارد المعين والله ما هذا فعال ديني ولا فعال صادق اليقين. He speaks to himself, how could you drink water? Your brother Abu Abdullah, your master Abu Abdullah, he never called him brother, he always called him master. Your master Abu Abdullah has no water and he's thirsty while you want to drink water? No, O nafs, I will not give you water. He drops the water. آمد کناره القمه تنهای تنها شریعتش خوانده بزیر گوش دریا آب فرات در خیمه دارم کودکانی چشم همه بر راه من بر راه سقا. Then he heads towards the camp with the skin. Now all what he wants, all what he hopes is to get the water back to the children intact. He cares not about his life, about anything else. He jumped on the horse. headed towards the tent. As he's heading towards the tent, they knew that he cannot be faced as they cannot confront him and face him. They did in his way to the river, they could not stop him. They cannot stop him now. So they came, the Mal'oon, the cursed one, came from behind, ambushed for him. And then when Abu al-Fadl was just passing by, one of the cursed ones jumped and struck the hand of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. The hand of Abu al-Fadl fell. Quickly he held the sword with the other hand. He held the banner in his chest and he started reading this poem. والله إن قطعتم يميني إني أحامي أبدا عن ديني وعن إمام صادق اليقين نجل النبي الطاهر الأمين. He had still hope. He was heading towards the tents. Then another man ambushed for him. He struck his left hand. Now he had no hand to fight them. He headed to the tents with no hand, just with the skin, saying, يا نفس لا تخشي من الكفار. Do not fear the disbelievers. وأبشري برحمة الجبار مع النبي السيد المختار قد قطعوا ببغي يساري فأصلهم يا رب حر النار. He heads towards the tents now, not able to fight them anymore. So they realize that all what he wants is to get the water. They target the water this time. Heartless people. They target the water with their spears, and eventually they get the bag of water. They get a spear in it. Water is gushing out, and he realizes there's no more hope of getting water to the tents. Then he stops in the middle of the battlefield, confused. Where to go now? He cannot fight the enemy. He cannot go to the tents without water. Abu al-Fadl is now confused. One of the cursed ones comes to him. He strikes his head with a heavy, thick metal iron mace. عظم الله لك الأجر يا صاحب الزمان. He falls off his horse onto the ground. The spears in his eye. He is now on the ground. The banner of Abu Abdullah is on the ground. He says, عليك من السلام أبا عبد الله عليك من السلام سيدي ومولاي أدرك أخاك. Then Abu Abdullah hears Abu al-Fadl. Now there is no one in the tents to take care of the tents, yet Abu Abdullah wants to come to aid his brother. He rushes towards his brother. He realizes that there is no more hope in Abu al-Fadl. He looks at him and he says, الآن انكسر ظهري وقلت حيلتي. You broke my back, oh Abbas. After you I have no hope. After you I have no help in the tents. Abu al-Fadl is happy that he hears his master Abu Abdullah for the final time. Abu Abdullah sits and put the head of Abu al-Fadl on his lap. Abu al-Fadl takes his head and put it on the ground. Imam puts his head again on his lap. He puts it on the ground. The third time Imam asks him, Abu al-Fadl, my brother, why are you not letting me hold your head? He says, my brother Abu Abdullah, when you are departing this world, there will be no one to hold your head in their lap. Aba Abdullah, I cannot be treated better than you, my brother. You are my master. How can I allow for that to happen? He says to his brother, just wipe the blood in my eye. I want to see you for the final time. Imam wipes the blood. He says to him, Aba Abdullah, do not take me to the tents, please. I cannot face the children. I don't want them to see me in the situation that I'm in. I don't want them to see me with the skin empty of water. My brother, just leave me here. Aba Abdullah, he shouts when he sees them. He says to him, my brother, you're breaking my heart. But I want you to call me for once at least, to call me my brother. You've always called me my master. Abul Fadl says, Akhi ya Hussein, Nur Aini ya Hussein, Akhi ya Hussein, Nur Aini ya Hussein. أحق الناس أن يبكى عليه فتى أبكى الحسين بكربلاء أخوه وابن والده علي أبو الفضل المدرج بالدماء لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا آل محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. Inshallah, we'll have the Farsi majlis, a short majlis in Farsi, and then we'll have the latmiyat straight afterwards. Please remain where you are, and then we'll inshallah have the latmiyat and the eulogies after the Farsi, short Farsi majlis. We'll have a latmiyat in English, followed by Arabic, and then Farsi, inshallah. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa
Assalamu alayka ya Abu Abdullah. پدر از خیمه ها نظر می‌کرد. پدر از خیمه ها نظر می‌کرد. زیر لبها پسر پسر می‌کرد. پیش چشم پدر علی اکبر آتش شعله ور کرد. قلب میدان پر تلاطم شد. علی آمد به رزمگاه هنر شده احیا نبرد حیدر با هنر رزم بچه شیر حسین. رجزی خواند و دشت ساکت شد، صدا زد انا علی ابن الحسین ابن علی، نحن و بیت الله اولا بالنبی. یا علی گفت و زد به میسره را، مثل تیری شکافت میمنه را. آتش آنقدر جان گرفت از اون که نمیدید هیچ غیر از اون. وای دلشوره بر حسین افتاد، دید از محشری غبار آلود. علی اکبر ز راه می آید، دستهایش بر گردن مرکب، خون فرقش ز خود جاری شد، بسته شد راه دیدن مرکب. یکی آمد لجام اسبش را گرفت، همگی ضربه های خود بزنید، دیگر توان ندارد. باد آمد سحاب را گم کرد، از دید خواب را گم کرد. رفت از دست امید، تشنه کامی سراب را گم کرد. علی اکبر بر زمین افتاد، آسمان آفتاب را گم کرد. آنچنان زخم روی زخم آمد که عدو هم حساب را گم کرد. خواست تا خیمه پر کشد، اما شیر زخمی عقاب را گم کرد. پدر آمد به یاریش برود، من بمیرم رکاب را گم کرد. پدر آمد به یاریش برود، من بمیرم رکاب را گم کرد پسر بوتراب بین تراب نبه تراب را گم کرد ابا بیاری با هم ببریم پیکر اربن اربارا ابا بیاری با هم ببریم پیکر اربن اربارا بیاید بخونی کنار پسر روزه مرگ بابا رو علی پاشو که مردم اکبرم علی پاشو به جون مادرم علی پاشو که مردم اکبرم علی پاشو به جون مادرم علی پاشو که عم اومده علی پاشو با هم بریم حرم علی پاشو که عم اومده علی پاشو با هم بریم حرم صلی الله علیک یا مظلوم حسین